everybody. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, and here today, Harris Faulkner, host of Kennedy on Fox Business Kennedy. Also from FBN, co-host of After the Bell, Melissa Francis, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy. We are so glad to have back on the couch the chairman of the House Oversight Committee and congressman from the great state of Utah, Jason Chaffetz, is here, and he is outnumbered. It's good to have you to kick off the week there,
Thanks.
sir.
It's a feisty group. If you could hear and see what goes on this couch before you start.
Sometimes they can, because sometimes we'll accidentally lean on a phone and it'll periscope.
I'm worried about this
whoopsie.
hour. Yeah.
What happens on the couch stays on the couch, all right, Congressman? Okay.
Including self-tanner.
No comment.
I would not know about that.
All right, the countdown is on. Fewer than 80 days from now, and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump continuing to stay on message. He stuck to the teleprompter at a rally in Virginia on Saturday. Watch.
Crime will go down, and law and order will be restored to the United States of America. Going to put our American workers first. We're going to put our people first. The GOP is the party of Abraham Lincoln. I want our party to be the home of the African American voter once again. I want a totally inclusive country, and I want an inclusive party.
Trump's speech and his performance over the past week getting rave reviews from his new campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway.
This was the best week, I think, so far in the Trump campaign, mostly because he's able to be himself, the authentic Donald Trump, but also the pivot that he's made is on substance, George. He's out there talking about law enforcement. He's talking about defeating radical Islamic terrorism, middle-class tax relief. And
We've heard all that before, though.
Well, not really, because these are specific plans.
GOP Chairman Reince Priebus agrees and says we'll start to see the effects in the polls.
I think he's had a great week. I think he's been on message. He's shown maturity as a candidate. I think that he's getting into a groove. And I think what you're going to see is these polls will begin to tighten in the next couple of weeks. And by Labor Day or thereafter, I think you're going to be back to an even race if we continue down this path.
Lots of positivity coming out of the Trump campaign. Kellyanne Conway calling last week his best week. And Reince Priebus saying he's on message. He's acting mature. What do you make of all this?
If Donald Trump would just give that same speech every day now through the election, I think he will be next. I do. I think he'll be the next president of the United States because the choice is so stark and different. Do you want somebody from the outside who's going to come back and revive America, or do you want the old tried, true, and tired Hillary Clinton? And then there's a huge difference in choice in this election.
Let's talk timing, because Harris, I know you keep your calendar up and you're crossing off the days, and there are 77 days left till the election.
Yes.
Right now, Hillary Clinton, Real Clear Politics, she's leading by 5.5 points. Is there time for a turnaround?
Absolutely, there's time for a lot of change between now. And that's not actually the date I'm looking forward to, though. It's the first debate. We're about 5 weeks away from that.
That's right.
And that's where I think the 40% of people who self-identify as independents and the even bigger chunk of the electorate that has yet to make up its mind will start to pay more attention. That's why I think it's not too late for anybody. And, you know, if you look at some of the polling in Colorado and Iowa, you know, in some places they're double digits. You add in a Jill Stein or a Gary Johnson, it tightens to the favor of Donald Trump. I don't see those other people going away. So things are going to tighten all around.
Which
It'll get interesting.
Yeah, no, but it is really interesting because I think there were a lot of mainstream outlets that assumed with Gary Johnson in the race, it would tank Trump's chances even further. But in Utah, where it's so incredibly close, and that's why, you know, I think 5 points right now this far out, that we've seen massive changes and shifts in both of their numbers in 30-day periods, and I won't be surprised to see that happen again.
So can he stay on message, though? That's what everybody's asking, right? To your point, he's gotten on message. He's talking policy. He's delivering these speeches from a teleprompter.
Yeah.
A lot of his supporters were big fans of last week. Can that continue, or is he going to say something else that gets in the way?
I feel like he's on a diet, and it's like one day at a time. He's avoiding the cheesecake, and we're looking at the polls are like the scale to tell us if it's working. I mean, he's got to stay on message, and I feel like maybe he thinks it's rewarding at this point. I mean, he's getting better press, better feedback around him. A lot's going to depend on the polls, in my opinion. If they don't improve, he won't stay on.
And obviously, you have to look at the groups that he still struggles with, and women being one of them, African Americans being another. He made that direct appeal. He asked them, give me a chance, vote for me. What did you make of that?
Well, first thing is, I don't think Donald Trump has missed a cheesecake yet, but I would probably take some issue with that, but I do like the fact that he's out there doing what earned him the nomination, and he's talking about how he wants to make America great again, and it's just simple, basic things that people are looking for, and to believe in that person, and I think he shows it with sincerity, and when he does that, there's a reason why he gets these record-sized crowds. There's a reason why millions of people showed up to vote for him in the primary. Remember, he got millions of more people to come out vote for him than Mitt Romney and the others before.
Well, than anybody else.
Yeah.
And one thing that I would say about talking about race and bringing in the color green to that conversation, because you and I are always talking about that.
Yeah.
You know, if you talk cash to people of any color, you got their attention. But it forces Hillary Clinton to talk about the economy and to try to identify with the everyman or woman, which she knows she has a problem with that second part at least, if not both. But it also forces another area where she's having some challenge right now, and that's the hashtagged Black Lives Matter and the blacks out there who feel like she's not listening to them, so on and so forth. They haven't been happy with anybody, by the way. But if Donald Trump can put out a message that's based on jobs and economy, he forces her into two zones where she might not be all that confident.
Well, and also, you know, she's essentially had the monopoly on those ad buys. And, you know, not only having favorable press coverage, because, you know, she's not doing press conferences, so she really gets to cherry pick how she gets her message out there that way. She's buying more ads. But she has needed his stumbles in order to bolster her own polls.
That's a fair point.
And I think that if he doesn't give her that, and he also makes greater ad buys and, you know,
and
starts putting out more effective commercials, with the economy, with ISIS and some of the other areas where he pulls stronger. If he can do that until the debates, like if he just sees that window, not necessarily to the election, but before the first presidential debate, he could definitely shift momentum in his favor, but he has to be so incredibly disciplined. And, you know, that brings up the ultimate question. Can he do it? Can he stay on the diet for more than a week?
Right. I mean, I thought his message on money and on the inner city and urban communities was interesting because he basically was saying, how's it working for you now?
Right.
What do you have to lose?
How's it working for you now? And the response in the press was so interesting because there were a lot of different outlets that put out blogs and this and that and the other thing and tweets that said, wow, isn't this an eloquent? Look what he thinks. Look at how he pitches these people. He's insulting them while pitching them. It was funny to watch the response from the media, but when you actually listen to the speech, he was saying, how's this working for you?
Or talk to people of color who are struggling right now, which I have, obviously. And their answer back is, well, can anybody get me a job?
Yeah. Okay, and let's talk about the leadership changes, because Kellyanne Conway is now on board, and Stephen Bannon. Is this going to are we going to see a very clear difference in his campaign from this moment forward?
Well, hey, so far so good. It's working well. And then look, the other factor that's out there is Mike Pence. Mike Pence is going to places like Utah where there have been stories about being tighter and that sort of thing. He's coming at the end of the week. But Mike Pence is also pulling his weight, not a distraction in any way, but as he starts to go into these local markets, he drives home that message. He is an exceptional communicator and doing what he needs to do too.
And he may be able to go to some of the areas where she stopped spending money, taking them for granted in the middle of the country. You know, and if there is a tightening, won't that be interesting? Because she won't have been there, but Mike Pence will have potentially.
There's an enthusiasm gap too on the Democratic side. There's just not this groundswell of people like there was for Barack Obama.
Because Bernie got out.
That's right. The enthusiasm gap is a real phenomenon.
And the close primary states we saw on the Democratic side, there was always lower voter turnout. And that just goes to show you that, you know, whatever a Hillary Democrat is, they're not legion enough to really be driving a revolution or a message. And, you know, I think obviously there's going to be a massively different expression of voting in November than there was in the primaries, but I think those close primaries at least could give you a little bit
You hit on something, and I've heard you talk about it, Melissa. What is a Hillary Democrat? Like, what is she selling? She's compartmentalizing and doing identity politics with women, with people of color, so on and so forth. But what is her answer back to make America Great Again or whatever it would be. She didn't have one for Bernie either.
I'll tell you what she's selling, the State Department, and we're hearing more about that coming up. She's going to be selling the White House if she gets into the White House, and that's one of those messages that needs to be driven home. We're going to be hearing more about the emails and the foundation and all those details coming forward.
Those people without jobs, that doesn't do anything for them.
No.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of which, it just keeps coming. Just this morning, the Justice Department saying the FBI found nearly 15,000 new emails from Hillary Clinton's time as Secretary of State. And on Friday, a federal judge ordering Clinton to answer questions in writing under oath as part of a lawsuit. Plus, we are learning one of her reported claims to the FBI may be falling apart. And right after the show, catch more from the couch. You can join our live chat by clicking the Overtime tab at foxnews.com/outnumbered. You can also find Overtime live on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/outnumberedFNC. You can also tweet us your questions and your comments, good and bad. We read them all. We'll see you there after the show.
New developments in the Hillary Clinton email scandal. The FBI is uncovering nearly 15,000 Clinton emails never turned over to the government after she left office, despite her insistence that she had handed over all the work-related messages. Also, a federal judge is ordering Clinton now to answer questions in writing under oath as part of a lawsuit by the conservative group Judicial Watch. It's seeking answers about her use of a private server while Secretary of State. And yesterday, Clinton's campaign manager dodged questions about whether her answers will be released publicly before the election, instead blasting Judicial Watch. Take a watch.
The right wing and Republicans in Congress are not satisfied with the answer that the career professionals at the FBI and the Justice Department gave. They said there was no case here. This is just another example of a right-wing group just trying to keep the questions coming.
Sounds like a no.
As I said, as soon as she receives the question, if the judge asks her to answer those questions, she will get to work right away.
Oh, I have some details about that coming up. But anyway, meanwhile, former Secretary of State Colin Powell is now pushing back after the New York Times reported that Clinton told the FBI Powell urged her to use a private email account on the job. He says he doesn't recall any conversation about that, but told the New York Post, quote, "The truth is she was using it, her personal email, for a year before I sent her a memo telling her what I did during my term as Secretary of State. Her people have been trying to pin it all on me," end quote. Powell's comments raising new questions about whether Clinton lied to the FBI. Wow, there's a lot to get to there. Let's start with the beginning. So she's going to be under oath this time, something she was not when she sat down with the FBI, which is not out of the ordinary, but just pointing it out. And there were no, as I understand, recording devices, which is why when anybody wanted to know what was said, it would have to be like a little note that Comey or somebody else would write out. How is this different or better or not?
Well, the fact that it's under oath is an improvement. What I have now, last night, literally in Washington, D.C., down in the basement there in the what's called the SCIF, the Security
You were hanging
Communication.
out?
I went through and read the so-called 302 and went through that. I can't talk about the content. I don't think that it should be...
Were you surprised by the content?
I was surprised that the FBI had redacted as much as they had. I'm surprised that this classified information, some of it very highly sensitive, is so classified and so sensitive that even I, as the chairman of the Oversight Committee, don't have the proper security clearance to read it. And she insists that she was not trading and exchanging emails that had classified information in it, which is absolutely, totally not true. And I'm surprised there's not more detail in there, too. And now to hear that there are, according to the Washington Post, 15,000 additional emails nobody ever heard of. She created this mess. This gentleman, whoever he is, tried to blame it on Colin Powell and
Robbie
congressional Republicans, of which I guess I am one.
By the way, he has the nickname, it used to be when he was helping her out on campaigns, as the Mooks Mafia guy. Anyway, go ahead.
To suggest, look, she created this convenient experiment with herself. It was the Inspector General who made the criminal referral to the FBI to start this criminal probe. So this was something that she did to herself.
Okay, so one of the key questions they're obviously going to ask her in some form or another is, why did you do this?
Right.
Because we still don't really know why. What do you think her answer will actually be?
Oh, well, I think the truth of the matter is that she did it to create a pathway where her documents would not become public record. She was trying to avoid this whole thing. Now, the FBI director saying he didn't bring charges because he couldn't find intent, but I think
he couldn't prove it.
He couldn't prove the intent. I think the intent is there. She set up the server on the same day that she started her Senate confirmation hearings. She didn't just go get a Gmail account. She literally set up this own server and in the basement of their house. I do agree with the FBI director's assessment that she was not sophisticated. I mean, that is his sworn testimony that she's not sophisticated.
He wasn't even that kind.
The record's out there.
Can I just ask you something, though, as a citizen? You guys have to stop going after her for every little thing. Like, don't go after her for the perjury stuff at the Benghazi hearing. Don't go after her for the Powell comment.
I feel like she's being sarcastic.
I'm not. Wait for a bigger investigation, like the Clinton Foundation, because every single time Congress goes after her and it doesn't
then Congress
stick,
wouldn't be doing their job.
No, I understand that, but there's also you want
Congress not to do their job?
No, what I want them to do is if you're really trying to somehow show that this person has a pathological inability to tell the truth, then, putting her to task and trial for every single thing only makes her look like a victim, and it allows her to feel more emboldened and more entitled. And,
no. If somebody comes and testifies before Congress and they give false, misleading statements, that is against the law. And for the FBI director,
guys investigate and go after every single person who possibly perjures themselves.
For the FBI, we should. For the FBI director to testify that after a year-long investigation, they never even looked at her under oath testimony. Come on, you got to be kidding.
I think we got to look at where we are now, and as
this.
these emails come out, every time they come out, they show something we didn't know before, which does lead back to the Clinton Foundation. That was the last thing we saw, the quid pro quo, pay for play, and that's what voters are hearing about right now.
The drip is always complicated for everybody, right? And especially this close to the election, it'll be interesting to see how she answers back. By the way, the nugget I was going to add is you can't ask a follow-up question when it's in writing.
Yes.
Right.
That was the judge's decision, though. The judge.
Yeah, that's like advantage Hillary Clinton, depending on what her original answers are. So we'll watch it. We'll cover it as it happens. In a cornerstone of his campaign, but some questions now on Mr. Trump's position on deporting more than 11 million illegal immigrants. He says there is no flip-flopping on this, but will we see a tweak to that controversial plan? And the battle rages on over that cash payment to Iran, quote-unquote leverage. But don't call it ransom. Democrats continue to deny it was for ransom for hostages, but Republicans are demanding answers about that cash. Our own #OneLuckyGuy is one of those people. The congressman weighs in. You are busy.
New questions surrounding a central tenet of Donald Trump's campaign. Reports surfacing that Mr. Trump could be wavering on his promise to deport more than 11 million illegal immigrants. This following a meeting with his Hispanic Advisory Council over the weekend, in which he apparently said he was open to changing his mind. Today, Sandra was in for Maria Bartiromo and asked his campaign manager if Mr. Trump is changing his tune. Listen.
What Donald Trump said in that actual meeting differed not one iota from what he said in his convention speech or what he said previously, which is that he wants a fair and humane way of dealing with the 11 million who live among us. And at the same time, though, he wants to secure the border, build the wall, and he wants to be very fair to American workers who feel like they are competing for these jobs now.
All right, in an interview yesterday, Conway said whether or not a deportation force would be part of the plan is, quote, to be determined. And today, the campaign, including Mr. Trump himself, saying that whatever the final plan is, this is not a flip-flop.
No, I'm not flip-flopping. We want to come up with a really fair but firm answer. It has to be very firm. We want to come up with something fair.
What do you make of that? How do you interpret that language? What do you think they're really doing there?
No, I think he's doing the right thing. All we ask is to enforce the current law. And by the way, there already is a force that's supposed to be involved in this, and it's called ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement. You have the ERO, which does the removal process. The problem I have are the 66,000 criminal aliens, people that are here illegally, committed a crime, got convicted, ordered to leave the country, and they didn't leave the country. What I would hope Mr. Trump would do is work with Congress and focus first and foremost on that criminal element and get them out of this country.
Should that be his message, Harris? I mean, because that's
that can be part of his message. I'm curious as to why Congress needs to be notified on getting the illegals out. Like,
it's already the law.
If they're already in that category, just the category you mentioned, the actual people who've broken the law here and they need to go home. I mean, isn't that just a matter of rounding them up? It's probably a funding, but it's also an optics issue with the current administration. Because, I mean, if there's a lot of video of people getting tossed out of the country, and there is some, because, you know, to the Obama administration's credit, he has done some of that, the president. But according to you and the numbers that we're looking at, I mean, we got a lot of people sitting here that just under the laws as they sit, those cases need to be adjudicated and those people sent home.
Those 66,000 people that I talk about, convicted of crimes in possession of the United States of America, released into the homeland as opposed to deported overseas. So we've had a series of hearings in the Oversight Committee, and we will continue to do that because under the law, the State Department is not supposed to issue visas to the countries that won't take the people that we're trying to deport. So,
but wait, can I ask you, why are you having hearings about it? I mean, you're having hearings about it. Why don't you just
get rid of
stick them on a bus or a plane if they're in America's possession, they've committed crimes?
Because this administration, under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and Secretary Kerry, they don't deport these people. They release them into the homeland as opposed to doing what the judges ordered.
So get police to go get them. Get ICE to go get them.
So
we don't have the handcuffs.
If you've committed a felony, I mean, if you've committed a felony, I think there is some moral obligation to make sure that these people don't recommit crimes. And I don't like this part of the conversation because it makes it seem like everyone who came over the border illegally is somehow a criminal like that. That's not the case. There's no one who wants people who are going to commit assault and murder and rape to be in this country. So either lock them up here so you know exactly where they are, or you have some sort of agreement where if you send them back to where they're from, you have to hand them over to law enforcement. Because if you're just like tossing them over the fence and be like, see you, bro, thanks for coming.
Let me tell you how bad we are at that, though, Gitmo. Like, we got a lot of this going on.
Okay, so Congressman, let me ask.
Send people someplace they try to, but they can't because they don't have the agreements in place, and it's a hot mess.
Let me ask you a hypothetical, though, because we are 77 days away from the actual election day. I know voting starts earlier than that, but if in an effort to reach out to more voters, he and his campaign chose to soften their stance on immigration. First, I think you're going to tell me that they will not. But if they did choose it, that was the best course of action. What's the impact on the campaign? Obviously,
I don't think they are, and I don't think they will. I think there's a reason that Donald Trump became the nominee, and in large part, it was because he said he was actually going to enforce the laws that are on the book. These 66,000 people, not all the 11 million, but the criminal element, do not get deported. They go back out and commit murders and DUIs and sexual assaults. You would think it's easy to deport them, but this administration doesn't do that. America gets it, and that's in large part why Donald Trump actually became the nominee. And I expect him to do what he said and enforce the laws that are on the books. We have hearings because the administration isn't enforcing the law.
And if the laws aren't good, then you also have to change the laws.
And they were properly funded. The Immigration Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security tried to repurpose over $100 million away from these deportations into other areas. So this is...
ask a great question. Is it about money?
It's not about money. They've been properly funded. They're trying to give the money to other things. They just do not have the political will to do it.
Wow.
Yeah, no, the budgets have actually gone up. All right, the battle intensifies on Capitol Hill. Speaking of money, over that cash payment to Iran, especially after the Obama administration acknowledged the $400 million was contingent on the release of American prisoners. Democrats are refusing to call it ransom, even as the State Department admits the money was used as, quote, leverage. Maryland Senator Ben Cardin defending the payment this way.
Clearly, what was done here is we paid money that we owed. We were going to have to pay this money. It was clear. And to the extent that had anything to do with hostages, I think Secretary Kerry made it clear that money would not be released unless our hostages were back home. So I think what they're saying is, no, it's not paying ransom. We won't do that. But we made it clear. We understand we owe the money, and we're going to have to pay the money. But we want to make sure that our people are protected.
But several lawmakers are demanding answers. Our one lucky guy, House Oversight Chairman Jason Chaffetz, is requesting Secretary of State John Kerry appear before the committee. And in a newspaper interview, Illinois Senator Mark Kirk comparing President Obama to a drug dealer, saying, quote, "We can't have the President of the United States acting like the drug dealer in chief, giving clean packs of money to a state sponsor of terror. Those 500 euro notes will pop up across the Middle East. We're going to see problems in multiple countries because of that money given to them." it clearly was a ransom payment. You know, if the rationalization is, well, we owe them the money, we had to pay it at some point. Yeah, we owe them a debt from 37 years ago. Why did that have to be paid within minutes of the hostages' release? How is that not ransom?
If you put this in a movie, nobody would believe it. They literally took pallets of cash in a foreign country, put them on an airplane, and drove that or flew that onto a runway. And then once it was there, they released the hostages. It was absolutely a ransom payment. The Secretary of State should come before Congress. We did have questions to the White House about this whole Iranian deal, because I don't think anybody understands it.
What are some of your questions, by the way? What would you ask?
How much did we pay? Separate from this $1 billion+, how much money did the American taxpayers give back to Iran? The president says it was $150 billion. The secretary said $100 billion. The Treasury Secretary said it was $3 billion. Does anybody know the answer to that question? Remember, Iran is the largest, the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the country.
But the number one thing critics say is it was their money. We're just giving them back their money. How do you respond to that?
I don't believe that when you uncover the totality of the deal, did we get repayment, for instance, when they destroyed our embassy? How much did that cost? Yeah. I want us to understand the details. I just want to expose it. And we were supposed to have, after that Ben Rhodes article that came out, we were supposed to have him come to Congress, agreed to do it, and then literally hours before our hearing, they came back and said, well, there's a separation of powers issue. So we asked Secretary Kerry to come to our committee, said he was out of the country. He wasn't out of the country. He was at the final showing or whatever of Hamilton. Yeah, and so we have asked that now he come in the first 2 weeks that we're back in session in September, and we expect the secretary to come and answer these hard questions.
Yeah, well, Ben Rhodes was too busy giving interviews to the media
that same day that we wanted to have.
You mean the echo chamber?
Yeah. So just real quickly, a very basic question that now hearing you lay it all out like that really stands out. Why in the world, after doing a deal that gave them upwards of $150 billion, that had a tick-tock all throughout it of all the things that Iran said it wanted, a side deal list that we've never to this day seen, even members of Congress.
We don't know what it is.
Why would you need leverage to get our men to come home?
No, it's bend it over backwards.
Why would you need leverage?
Well, especially since, I have a question. So if we released some of their prisoners, do we get money?
Yeah, good point. I mean,
well,
we have questions.
We did. I guess you have to figure out what the
but how is it, okay, if that's not quid pro quo, why was the money? I mean, that shows a weak negotiation. If the deal,
we still have Americans there, by the way. There are two now.
Yeah. So I don't think Donald Trump would put up with this at all. I tell you that. And you know what? Somebody ask any Democrat who defends the president on this to explain the deal. They can't, because they don't have the degree of specificity that the American people deserve. That's all we ask.
And we know from hearing from multiple times Congressman Duffy from Wisconsin last week that he's demanding all these records and the government officials who authorized the payments. What, at the end of the day, do you expect to come of all that? That's due, by the way, August 24th.
Just want the truth and light. I mean, it's just the president promised we'd be the most open and transparent administration since the dinosaurs roamed the earth, and it is fallen short on every single front.
I do know more about dinosaurs now than I did 8 years ago. What? No.
No. If it's not ransom, what is it? I swear to you, they're all Ryan Lochte. Hillary Clinton holding a news conference. What? He's using different words that mean something else. Hi. Just kidding. Hillary Clinton's last press conference was 261 days ago and counting, yet her campaign manager boasting about all the TV interviews she gives. Heck, she's sitting down with Jimmy Kimmel today. That's just like a press conference. All those fastballs. No, for someone who wants to be president, is this acceptable? We will discuss and debate. It is outnumbered.
The summer is almost over. Can you believe it?
No.
But Hillary Clinton has yet to hold a formal news conference this entire election year. Now Clinton's campaign manager, Robbie Mook, being asked on Face the Nation why the Democratic nominee has failed to face reporters in 261 days. But who's keeping track?
We are.
Mook saying Clinton's done plenty of interviews. Watch.
We went and counted, and she has been in more than 300 interviews with reporters this year alone. She's been on your show, and we're going to continue to do that. And there are a lot of different formats in which she can engage with reporters, whether it's those one-on-one interviews, whether it's talking with her traveling press and reporters, or a press conference. And we're going to look at all of those as we move forward. I don't think it's fair to say that someone is shying away from tough questions when they've taken over 300 interviews from reporters.
Okay, so her camp, Congressman, is pushing that she's done hundreds of interviews this year. Does that suffice? I mean, is that in place of press conferences? That's a completely different animal.
No, you want to see a candidate on their toes for about an hour, answering questions, volleying back and forth, and allowing reporters the opportunity to follow up, because that's the problem that we see with Hillary Clinton is she's not quick on her feet. She does need to be scripted, and when she doesn't have her attorneys and her campaign team around her, you wonder if she's capable of answering tough questions over an hour-long setting.
I mean, a one-on-one interview, Melissa, with someone of your choosing and a network of your choosing, or
negotiated,
or dozens of reporters firing off questions.
No, it is very different because, of course, when she gives an interview, she does it so rarely that she makes the person that's interviewing her feel like they're being given a special privilege. So they sit there and they're kind of like, however this goes, kind of depends on whether you're going to get this again. There's a lot of pressure, as opposed to at a press conference where you are just volleying questions at the person who's there, and you get the opportunity to follow up. It is much more dangerous, and we saw how she performed last time. I think it was the, what do you mean? You mean like wipe it with a cloth?
Yeah. As an award-winning journalist, Harris, I want to remind you, I love to brag about my friends. I want to remind you of this picture as this flashlight on my pen goes off.
This picture, you want to see my tonsils?
A picture of her in Massachusetts. Remember this? New Hampshire roping off the press.
Yeah. And, you know, the Velvet Rope Tour of, I think it was Prince. There have been many who've done it. Those can be
Janet
fun.
Jackson.
Janet Jackson did it, yes. You've done, this is your 5th campaign, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've had some news conference experience.
Well, the Utah press corps is not quite as intense as, but, you know, look,
what are you saying?
We have had, even in,
they're going to get
Congress,
you next time.
Mr. Chaffetz, Mr. Chaffetz.
Look, he's like, oh no.
Look at the time.
Sorry.
Is it 1 o'clock?
Not yet.
From what I remember, they're very smart. Very
No,
tough.
but like, it's far different. And compare that to Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump does this with such regularity.
And it helps him, right?
It
Sometimes.
does. He can
It's his
ask
best
questions.
format, arguably.
He can
likes the off the cuff.
But if you want an open and transparent government, which is the way we're supposed to do things in the United States of America, you've got to have a commander-in-chief who can answer tough questions.
And tell potential voters what they need to hear to vote for you. Why would you shy away from that?
The First Amendment. I mean, she despises the press. She looks down upon the press. Melissa's absolutely right. She has, I guarantee you, the softballs she gets from people like Andrea Mitchell and Chuck Todd, whatever his name is. Great beard. I'm just a big fan. Anyhow. You know that she gives them a list of questions. They're like, oh, this is, Your Highness, this is wonderful. I'll ask all of these so we can do this again in 3 months. You know, they're not tough. She's not grilled. And the point of the press conference, it's a completely different animal because you do have follow-up questions. And, you know, that's also when you get new stories.
Yeah.
And, you know, I understand her campaign wants to keep her from that, but that's a big sign of weakness on her part. And that's something that she has to overcome.
Well, and I say it's one of Donald Trump's best formats because it is one that is completely oppositional to what we see from her. So it's a selling point.
It is until he makes a mistake. Like, I mean, there are a lot of things, as Sandra said, that is where the news is made. You know, I mean, that's where it comes out. So sometimes it works for him.
Do you think he's forgiven a little bit or given some extra ground because he's willing to take the questions?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard
Maybe.
to say. We'll know in November, right?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, he should be because he's braver, but then he gets burned for it sometimes, and she looks smart. So there you go.
I think they love it because they play gotcha, and you know there are a lot of members of the press who know that they can get like a great.
Yeah. No, it's true.
No,
I'm going to your next.
Look at Congressman. He's sitting down. We're gonna put a microphone at your next news conference there, live on Fox News Channel after that. All right.
I love it.
President Obama is back at work and planning to head to Louisiana tomorrow, where thousands have been affected by daily flooding. But Donald Trump was already there. The Republican presidential nominee says Mr. Obama's trip is too late. Is he right? Should the president have cut his vacation short? More Outnumbered in just a moment, but first let's get to Jenna Lee with what's coming up in the second hour of Happening Now. Hey, Jenna.
Hi there, Sandra. We're awaiting a briefing from Josh Earnest at the White House, expecting questions on the president's trip to flood-ravaged Louisiana and on the president's plans to campaign for Hillary Clinton. So we'll watch that. He could also get a question on the federal judge's ruling this morning that the State Department rush its review of more than 14,000 emails recovered by the FBI from Clinton's email servers. I know you guys were talking a little bit about that. Catherine Harris reporting on that at the top of the hour. Also, we're going to hear from an ER doctor who also happens to be pregnant about the threat from the Zika virus. First day of back to school, we're going to be talking about the threats not only for women that are pregnant, but also for your family overall. It's a question we're going to tackle top of the hour.
All right, Jenna, thank you.
President Obama's 2-week-long vacation is over. He's back at work now and planning to visit Louisiana tomorrow, we're told. Some critics, though, say Mr. Obama is not right for not cutting short his trip to Martha's Vineyard to go to Baton Rouge right after the flooding hit, especially after Donald Trump visited last week. The Republican presidential nominee toured the damage and offered words of support to victims and volunteers. Trump weighed in on the president's upcoming trip.
I think next week is too late. Tuesday is too late. I just think that you go. What you do is tell your golf buddies tomorrow morning that you won't be able to make it. Hop into the plane and go down to Louisiana and see what's going on, because it is a mess.
But the governor of Louisiana continues to defend Mr. Obama.
I asked them to let us get out of the response mode where we were still conducting searches of houses. We were still making rescues. We want to divert these police officers, sheriff's deputies, and state troopers and other essential resources and assets to providing security for the president while they were needed in this region to undergo those or to undertake those response activities.
Perhaps a little double-mindedness on this, though, because the governor did say that it helped to have Donald Trump there to bring the optics to, and many of the leaders there are saying that it helped to have him there. I mean, they may be supporting the president, but you can't say that it didn't help to have all those cameras there. What are your thoughts?
With all due respect to the governor, and having been a chief of staff to a governor that I did, to have the chief executive there to marshal and move resources, I'm sure they wanted federal money. I'm sure they wanted federal assets.
He said they were getting it anyway.
But to have the commander-in-chief to make sure that it happens in double time, far different than when Sandy and other things happen with an election on the line. Sure, the president's going to be right there on the beach.
I talked to the treasurer on Friday, and he was saying, look, we need people to come down here. We need carpenters. We need people who can do construction. We need strong arms for people to come down. Anytime somebody comes, whether it's Trump or especially if it's the president, people watch and they pay attention and they say, how can I help and how can I volunteer? And he said, please, everyone come, anyone come. We are drowning. We need help.
And it's not just about being a humane person. And, you know, that really is part of the job of the president. Also, look what happened at the end of the campaign in 2012 when Hurricane Sandy hit, you know, in this part of the country, and how that shifted the election. And, you know, maybe Donald Trump gleaned a lesson from that, because at that point the president was behind Mitt Romney in the polls a little bit, and that some will say sealed the deal for him.
Will ever get to the point, Sandra, where we just say somebody did something because it was the right thing to do?
Well, yeah.
Too steeped in
and if there was any question it was the right thing to do, the people of Louisiana were saying the time is now. Come down now. We need your help. We need attention on what is happening down here. The Advocate newspaper, the largest newspaper in the state of Louisiana, they put out a plea to the president. Cancel your vacation. Come down here. We need you. They wrote, it's an inconvenience of the presidency, but it's what chief executives sign up for when they take the oath of office.
And they wrote that last week.
Before he said he was coming down,
Before he said he was going to come down. Look, you got volunteers, you got people that are just feeling devastated. They're out of their homes. There are people working at the Red Cross. There are all these assets, and I guarantee you, a president showing up is a good thing. The governor showing up is a good thing.
Again, can you take politics out of it? I mean, you've got a Democrat governor defending the president. You've got Hillary Clinton saying she called the same Democrat governor, but you haven't seen either one of them on the ground.
Well, can Hillary go down there before the president does?
Donald Trump did.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. You and I could. I don't know. Does it matter?
Katrina did to Bush's presidency.
So, but what about just taking a helicopter tour? I mean, I want to. You were chief of staff to a governor. Like, there are other ways to get things done, right? You could have sat down in a nearby city. Look, flown and not had to go to Baton Rouge.
In southern Utah, down by St. George, when Governor Huntsman immediately got on that helicopter and went down there and visited and rolled up his shirt sleeves and said, hey, we're all behind you, It buoyed everybody's emotions. It was the right thing to do. You marshaled the resources, the National Guard, and you do that at the national level too. But to choose to go golfing is just not an excuse to say, well, it would take some extra police protection.
10 rounds of golf.
And there were cameras there. Do you think the president didn't know that there were cameras there?
I think he doesn't care about that much, or he would have gone.
That was a rhetorical question. They have to be cleared to get onto the golf course. By the way, Louisiana, for the month of July, had the 4th worst jobless rate in the nation, state by state. Talking jobs in that part of the country, I can imagine maybe these candidates might want to do that. We'll be right back.
Many thanks to Congressman Jason Chaffetz. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
A good time. You happy 1 o'clock's around?
Yes.
All right, we're going to keep it right here for Outnumbered Overtime on the web. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/outnumberedfnc. We're back on TV tomorrow at noon Eastern. Happening Now starts right now.